got a warm-up routine in place, Anastasia. We're here. We're ready to go.
Stretch.
That's probably what the players are doing right now, ahead of the men's singles final in Miami, wondering when on earth they're going to be playing. Behind the scenes, we are currently recording at, what's it for you, like 5 p.m. Eastern?
4:15, actually. Yeah,
4:15
exactly.
p.m. Eastern. We thought that this match would have started an hour ago, and it did not. So,
yes.
Despite our hopes that maybe, for once, we might actually be able to wrap up all the storylines from the tournament, the rain has said, no, Grand Pass, you will never be a fully up-to-date podcast.
You won't. You're just not going to. Don't try, because if you do, the rain will mess it up for you. But yes, the tennis hasn't started in Miami yet today. They haven't even started the women's doubles final. So unless they have it. Okay, 3 games. But yeah, unless they move that, which now that they've done, okay, so I didn't even know they'd started it. If they've done 3 games, I don't think they can move them, right? They have to stay on the same court.
I believe that there are discussions from like a group chat that we're in, from someone we know who's there behind the scenes, that they are actually considering moving it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, I feel like they have almost no choice. It's 4-8, 4:16 right now. If the women's doubles finals isn't wrapped up for another hour or two, that means the men won't start till, 7 p.m. maybe, or 6, 7. So yeah. And the rain is not supposed to stop for another hour in Miami. And then they have to dry the court. So it's a whole thing. We will see when the tennis starts, but we will have results tomorrow. So
fun.
Follow us on social media and you'll see what the results are. But welcome to episode 14. Where is this year going? This year is like super quick.
We have finished Q1.
It's kind of crazy. I feel like we just started. I feel like Australia was 2 weeks ago, but it was not. It was not 2 weeks ago.
That's what time zones will do to you.
I know, that's what time zones will do. But anyway, we are episode 14 of season 2. We are here to review the Miami Open as a tournament and also talk about the tennis stories that caught our eye. And they were a few tennis stories that, Nick, even one of them made us go viral on TikTok. We will talk about it. We will talk about it because I was staring at my phone explode. And I was like, oh my goodness, who expected this? I definitely didn't. But let's start from the beginning. The Miami Open, we've talked about this a number of times. It is the second tournament in the Sunshine Double. And lately, I have been thinking of it as, I wrote in our little like show notes that we're going through right now, I wrote that it's the forgotten stepchild, but also I feel like it's almost treated like this little sibling that's not as good as the older, more established, cooler sibling. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the differences between Indian Wells and the Miami Open. And I talked about this a little bit during the mini pod that came out last week. But we're just going to go through a few things here and just wrap up the tournament as a whole. Now, for you, Nick, you've just been viewing it on TV. What has that experience been like in general?
I still can't get used to the court within a court, although I do think it's better this year. I think since they've shoveled it to kind of the side of the stadium, so they can use some of the football stadium seating. It looks a bit more normal, but the gaps in it are still a little bit odd. But overall, it's like watching most tennis tournaments for me, especially ones in the US. I would love to hear why you say the forgotten stepchild. For me, as an international watcher, Indian Wells has the far more of an appeal to go and visit, which is interesting. Now, I don't think I had that until a year or two ago when we started the podcast, actually. But the main reason is that everything I've heard from everyone I know who's from online and yourself who's gone, like everything about Indian Wells feels geared. It's like a place a tennis fan can go on a pilgrimage to from wherever in the world. Miami, to me, feels a lot more like a Cincinnati or even one of the Middle East tournaments, or China. Like, in terms of the setup for it, like, it doesn't look particularly different. It doesn't have that particularly unique feel to it. It doesn't have the landscape. I feel like it falls into that category of it's a destination in terms of it's in a city that's a popular destination if you're a tourist, and that could be a reason to go if you want to catch that city. You know, this is something I've been talking about with someone who's close to me about, yeah, hey, if we were to do a trip, do you want to combine it with a tennis tournament? Because that just ticks off two things for us right there. And, you know, with these destination cities and whatnot. But for me, even like looking at some of the stuff that you've been putting on our social media, or you've been sending me from the grounds, like, there's nothing about it that makes me think Miami is an ultimate destination as a tennis fan to tick off in the same way as a slam could be.
Yeah.
Indian Wells comes the closest, maybe Rome as well. Although I may have more, I think there's other reasons for why Rome might be particularly appealing to me, but that's kind of how I feel watching it. Is it doesn't stand out as a tennis tournament, although I am impressed by the venue and the capacity of it and what it can produce. And certainly, I think if you can get to it, if you are, this is me talking as an international fan. If you are a US fan, that should not put you off going, because it's far easier for you to get to, and it looks like being an absolutely brilliant day out if you were to go.
Yeah, no, I actually love the way you put it there, where it's sort of like Indian Wells is a pilgrimage. Like, if you're a tennis fan, it's one of the sort of, if you were to list the Grand Slams on top, and then you're sort of like, where next as a tennis fan do you want to go to? Indian Wells is definitely high up there. And you stated it so perfectly. It has that vista. It has it's a very unique location, like tennis surrounded by mountains almost. So I kind of get that too. And I think why I put Miami Open as a forgotten stepchild, or like the little sibling, is people constantly compare it to that because it's on the side of the Sunshine Double. But I love what you did. It's much better to compare Miami to Cincinnati or to Dubai or to, you know, another 1,000 level event, because it's not quite on that sort of Grand Slammy, you know, unique location level, but it's still a pretty good 1,000 level event. So I think that's what it suffers from. It's constantly being compared to its older sibling of Indian Wells, and people are like, oh, well, there are no mountains, or there's no beach. And that's also another thing, is the Miami Open has switched locations, and its old location, which was in Key Biscayne, was also very tennis paradisey. It was right by the water. You could see the beach. I mean, it was such a beautiful vista. But my whole thing with that is, you know, I try to be forward looking always. And I just want to say, people, it's not going back to Key Biscayne. It's just not going to go back there.
There's a reason
so let's
why
get over it.
The facilities were old. They were getting too small for what the Miami Open was trying to grow to be. I mean, the way I look at it is, if we're taking, like, comparing it to a person, it's like someone who needed to get some work done, and like the work needed to be done, but unfortunately the work that was done was not to everyone's taste.
That's a very interesting way of putting it. But what you could also say is the work, you know, in fact, that's actually kind of the perfect way to put it, in the sense that the work to be done was not to everyone's taste. The organization that runs the land that the Miami Open was at Key Biscayne were not going to approve any of the improvements, the expansion, or the changes that they wanted to do to the location. So it's just futile to sort of hang on to this dream. It's actually still there. You could go visit it still. So if you were coming to the Miami Open, you could add it to sort of your things to go visit. You can go you can actually play. No, you can play on it. So it's a court. So you can, I think it is $18 or $20 or so to play on the main court an hour. And then all the outside courts, it's less than that. But you can go play, you can rent out courts, it's still there. It is a little older looking. Like if you see current photos of it, it's older, but people still play on it. But yeah, so I think the comparison to all of that stuff kind of does a disservice to the Miami Open. And I loved that you brought up places like Cincinnati or even Toronto and Montreal. Like that's what it should be compared to. It's just another 1,000 level event. And it's also great. And something that I've been thinking about with Ground Pass as well is, we encourage people to come to these tournaments. A lot of times, in order to be sort of economical and kill two birds with one stone, planning a trip around a tennis tournament is actually something people do all the time. And you could kind of be like, I would love to go to Miami. Why not schedule it during the Miami Open? And you can kill two birds with one stone.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. I guess then if we are doing that, this is a good opportunity to kind of, you did a what was supposed to be a mini pod.
It was like 40, was it 40 minutes or something?
It was longer than, I remember like going, cool, there's a mini pod out. I'm going to see what Anastasia's done and what she's been up to. And then I saw the runtime. I was like, Anastasia, this is not a mini pod. You should have called me. I would have dialed on. We would have done a proper podcast. But fortunately, you did a great job with all the guests, and it was really nice hearing everyone's input on visiting Miami. So I guess I've got a couple of questions for you. Is there anything that you would like to add to that podcast? Because I think, rather than sort of repeating ourselves about sort of what to say about it, let's go. Like if you're catching us, you haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it, because Anastasia gives you a really good insight on what it's like to go to Miami. Is there anything that you would like to add or make sure that we reiterate about it? And then I would like to tag on a question for you, Anastasia. Is like, we're talking about comparing it to other 1,000 events. You've been to Cincinnati now, right?
Yes.
How do they compare? Let's give a fairer comparison.
Right. So that's actually going to be a very tricky question, but let me start where you started. I would suggest everyone just go back and listen to the mini pod. It was 30 minutes, but I did go mini pod in quotations, but I did go into sort of the nature of the grounds, what they're like, how it's a multi-purpose venue. The football, the Dolphins play there. It's also an F1 track, and it's also the tennis. I go into all of those details there. The one thing I want to add, because it's new information that I got, there is an Instagram account called Courtside with Isaac, I believe it's called. And I will link his information in the description of this episode. But he went to Miami. And I just wanted, because we deal with a lot of ticket price issues in the States, at least. I think we've talked about the differences between if you're buying tickets to Wimbledon and if I'm buying tickets to the US Open. It's very different prospect. But the tickets to the Miami Open are actually more available than Indian Wells. Indian Wells middle weekend, it was just sold out. You had to get resale tickets, and they were higher prices because people were reselling them for more and all that stuff. For the Miami Open, you could actually get tickets available on the day, which was nice.
Yeah, and actually that's something I noticed, because I was looking at the Miami Open quite a lot of the schedule to kind of work out sort of what times things might be or anything else. Like, again, watching internationally, and there was a lot of tickets are available on the website. What I also loved very early on in the tournament was it was very much highlighting you can buy a ground pass, which
it was. We endorse that for sure. But the reason why I bring up Courtside with Isaac is he came up with a hack that I forgot about. I haven't used it in so long, but I have to bring it up because the tickets are available. You can show up on the day and buy tickets at the box office. That is so much cheaper. You save on Ticketmaster fees, which can be a lot. If you know Ticketmaster, your ticket is like $50, and then the Ticketmaster fees are like $12. So that increases the price of the ticket. You avoid all those fees if you show up at the box office and buy tickets directly there. You pretty much get them as face value and then like a nominal sales tax or something like that. So that was something I wanted to bring up.
You mentioned, I'm trying to remember if this was Indian Wells or Miami. I think we definitely talked about this in one of our recent podcasts about if you're, because like Miami venue is a bit out of the way, ideally drive there. Did you say you need to pay for parking ahead of time?
Yes. Yes. Two things. You have to pay for parking ahead of time if you want to save money. And I think you save $25 or something crazy. Like it's a big difference from if you pay for it the day before or show up on the day and pay for parking. So definitely do that. It's all on their website. They're actually very good at explaining how to pay for parking and all of that stuff. So I will link the Miami Open website in our description. But apart from that, though, and this actually brings me to before this podcast we started recording, there was a thread on X that I had to reply to because Indian Wells is out of the way. Indian Wells, you have to drive to Indian Wells. It's there's nowhere close where you're taking public transportation. The Miami Open's different. It's not in the middle of Miami, but you can take a bus to Miami Gardens, which is the location for the Miami Open, and you can take a train. They don't have a big train line, but you can take a train or a bus to the Miami Open, which is great. And it is because that venue is a multi-sport venue. Like because the football's there, they have it all covered in terms of parking, how to get there and all that stuff because American football is a massive sport. They take care of all of those amenities there. I would say if you do not have a car, the Miami Open is actually the best bet for you. You can Uber there if you want to, but there are multiple ways that you can get to the Miami Open site.
Tangent. I know NFL's a huge sport. American football's a huge sport. Sorry, I know NFL's not the only form of American football, but I know it because, like, yeah, it's pretty big over here. Like, Sky Sports in the UK now have a dedicated service for it, and
Really?
When
for the NFL,
when they get like games that they can show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when it's Super Bowl time, there is coverage on national radio. Sky have it all over the place, and like over the last sort of 10 years or so, I have known more and more people stay up to watch the Super Bowl. And these are British people, and the Super Bowl happens in the middle of the night. So
I don't even watch a Super Bowl. I do not watch a Super Bowl, but cheers to them. It's a great sport, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a bit too stop-start for me, but no, that's why we love tennis, right? With breaks every 2 games.
Yeah. So your other question
Cincinnati
was comparing it to Cincinnati. I'm going to compare it to the old Cincinnati because something that we will probably talk about more when that tournament's about to start is the grounds of Cincinnati are completely changing this year because of the whole expansion of 2-week tournaments and all of that. They're redoing the ground. Like they basically took it apart from the 2 main stadiums, everything was demolished and they're redoing it all. But if you're comparing it to Cincinnati, the old Cincinnati, they're very comparable. The only thing is practice courts accessibility. I think the Miami Open has one of the worst practice court accessibility. You can't see them. You can see 3 courts, maybe 4 from an angle, but everything else is kind of like behind a fence. I think it's quite similar to Wimbledon, at least what you described at Wimbledon, how everything's like in a line and then behind a fence. So they have some elevated seating in 3 of the courts that you can, get on and watch. And you could also watch from the sides, but because it's so limited, it gets so crowded and it's just not even fun to just, be there and watching. It's just so crowded. If you saw any of the photos of when I think Carlos Alcaraz was practicing with Holger Rune, and I saw all the video and stuff on social media, and I was like, that doesn't look like fun. It was just people, packed in sardines. And so I will say Cincinnati has definitely a much better setup in terms of practice courts where fans can go watch the big stars practice. I hear they're redoing it again for this next year. But yeah, other than that, they're pretty similar. The thing with Miami is it just has this whole tennis court in the middle of a football stadium that they cannot avoid and is so unique to the tournament. It's just so unique to Miami.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting selling point for it in terms of the novelty. It's no guarantee people are going to like it, right. But is unique, and I will give them that they do have something that is unique about that tournament, which is fun. I mean, I guess that's something to be aware of. And what you've said about practice courts, yeah, does sound like Wimbledon. Wimbledon, actually, I think you can seat more than 4 practice courts from where you stand. It is possible to do that, but you get no seating. So, it's kind of I'd say that's a good comparison. And then in terms of the experience of Miami, I think it's something we touched on in a previous podcast, but the vibe of the fans going is also very different. And if you want, that's something we should also we talk a lot about the facilities, but you also need to think about the sort of what vibe you're going for, really.
Yeah, no, this is actually a really big thing because I think it came up a lot because we had a lot of American players playing against Latin American players. And the Latin American players at the Miami Open got more support than the American players. It is completely different. At Indian Wells, you could be number 480, but if you had an American flag next to your name, they were going to cheer for you. Didn't matter who you were. They probably didn't even know your name, but you were going to get the crowd support at Indian Wells.
Is that similar to the US Open?
It is. Yes, it is very similar to the US Open, I would say. Yeah, American players definitely get the home crowd support. And then you go to Miami and it's like people make the joke that it's the Latin American 1000 level event, but that's what it feels like in a good way. I don't live in Latin America. I don't get to have that experience, but you go to the Miami Open and you get such a beautiful, eclectic kind of Davis Cup vibe that I haven't seen at any local tournament. So I like that difference. I like that it has that difference. And, Miami became mini Brazil for a couple of days there, which was great and fun. But that is a big difference. I think international players, especially if you're from South America, get a ton of support in Miami.
But the vibe has definitely been huge. And whenever Fonseca was playing, it was explosive, and it was noisy. I mean, I would say from a personal point of view, that's another reason why I prefer Indian Wells, because I am much more of I want a chill vibe to my sports in general. I'm not one of those people who's kind of a prude about tennis necessarily. I like some crowd support. I like to be able to cheer for players without people looking at me and going, "What are you doing?" which happened at Wimbledon. I don't want to talk about it, but I'm someone who finds a lot of noise overwhelming. And so I could see that being something that I would have to push through if I was going to go to Miami, to kind of put it out there. You, on the other hand, I think is someone who would feed off that kind of atmosphere and absolutely love it.
Okay, so that's the tournament. Again, go back, listen to either our preview to the Miami Open or that mini pod. You'll get a lot of information there, and I hope it will help if you're planning a trip next year or in future years to the Miami Open. But let's get to the tennis. Let's get to the fun tennis stories, because I think Miami, a little unexpectedly, because of the way it started, produced some great stories. And I'll say this the way it started because right at the beginning, on the men's side, for example, all of the semifinalists of Indian Wells lost their first round matches. And I think everyone was kind of like, boo.
Yeah. And I was like, why are you booing? Why are you booing? I mean, first of all, it's incredibly tough to turn it around. Although, shout out to the girls who didn't have this problem. It is a really, really tough turnaround afterwards. And they are very different conditions. And also, I had a look at who they all lost to. And they were all really tough players. Opelka is coming back into form, and when he beat Runa, we had Munar beat Medvedev, and Alcaraz lost Goffin, who ended up going out in 3 to Nakashima and has some history with beating top players in his career. I think the one of the 4 that probably can kind of rest easy a little bit with it is Jack Draper, who he lost to someone who ended up doing quite well at the tournament. And he could probably sit back and go, I didn't have that guy in my draw. I probably could have got even further. And heck, I could be on for the Sunshine Double here. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch given how well the two finalists are playing. But I think Jack Draper's probably the one that's kind of, in hindsight, now we've all calmed down about it, comes out of this looking pretty good.
Yeah, no, I'm going to move. I put Jakub Mensik under the radar here. I'm going to move it up top because Jack Draper lost to Jakub Mensik, who made it. He's in the finals. He's going to play against Novak Djokovic in the finals of the Miami Open. And looking back on it now, you're thinking, well, that was not a bad loss. But you know what's really funny? After that moment, which I don't even think the story of that moment was, oh, Jakub Mensik just beat Jack Draper. It was Jack Draper who won Indian Wells, lost his first round match. Jakub Mensik has gone completely under the radar. He is like the 19-year-old teenage sensation that nobody talks about.
I know, and it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. Like, I can't believe how many people forgot about his US Open run. I was hyping him during Australia when he took out Ruud. Was it Ruud he took out?
Yes.
And like, it was the day after Fonseca took out Rublev. It was the day before Tien took out Medvedev, or was the day off. And like, I was like, guys, this guy's great. And I was like, yeah, but whatever. Like, this is, yeah, we know about him. Well, you're not talking about him. You're not talking about Jakub Mensik. And Jakub Mensik has now told us why we should be talking about him, because he served his way to the Miami final, because he swept aside he swept aside about 2 top 10 seeds, because he also beat Taylor Fritz in the semifinals. Yep. He's beaten good player after good player after good player to get here. I am really hoping that after Miami, regardless of how this final against Novak Djokovic goes, that people now take him seriously as a contender for pretty much any title, any tournament he enters at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm including Grand Slams. Maybe not right now, but at some point in the future.
No, I completely agree. It's kind of so odd to me that he's gone so under the radar, because he's so good and he's had such great results. I know last year, because his arm last year was wrapped up for so much of it. So he wasn't in the later ends of tournaments a lot last year, but he's really good. His serve is great. And maybe he's not as, electric as Joao Fonseca, or, just like as sort of not, I think Tien just has like a very unique style. And those are the kids who are getting all the news now. And I'm just like, what about Jakub Mensik? He's also really good. And you're right. Let's hope that this run at the Miami Open will get him more into sort of the zeitgeist of fans as another young player to pay attention to. But like we've been saying so far this episode, Joao Fonseca was the youth. He was the Miami Open on the men's side
for like a week.
For about a week. And it was kind of, I don't know how else to put how insane it was that this Brazilian kid had this sort of support in Miami against an American player, for one. And, I think so. He played against Lerner Tien in the center court, and he lost to, Alex de Minaur, and both had almost the same response, where they were like, we were in Brazil. We were playing in Brazil against a Brazilian player. That is what it felt like.
Yeah, and that means that this is going to be his hunting ground. It's like his rise is like one of these stories of 2025 already. And yeah, it's super exciting to see like Brazil kind of jumping all over this opportunity. Even at the Rio Open, like they packed the place to go and see his first round. I think this is great to see sort of the game growing, and I hope that they do work out the logistics of the bigger Brazilian tournament, that we can get in a better place in the calendar or whatnot, that we can see this, capitalize on this, and because South Americans love it, and now they love it even more because of Joao Fonseca. Speaking of growing markets, we need to add the Philippines to the list of places where tennis is now incredibly popular, and the entire country is now supporting a player. Because judging by our TikTok, and judging by my X account, which blew up overnight because I said something nice about this player, Alex Eala or Alexandra Eala, but I think she prefers to be known as Alex. I
Alex,
guess we'll
yeah.
find out. Alex Eala, well outside the top 100, reaches the semi-finals and then beats Madison Keys, Yelena Ostapenko, not in that order. I think started with Ostapenko first in two tight sets. Then Keys, who was like, one of the form players of 2025. And then she dismantles Iga Swiatek, who is not a player you should be able to dismantle. And
Correct.
then
Yeah.
has, I'm going to say, is going to be a match of the year contender with Jessica Pegula in the semi-finals, because that match was it was every shot in the book was being played. All three sets, you had no guarantee which way it was going to go until the very, very end. I think it literally got decided by a couple of unforced errors right at the end from Eala. That was it. It was that close. Eala could have won the first set. Pegula won it on a tiebreak. Pegula could have won the second set. Eala came back and snatched it at the end, took it to a decider. Alex Eala, one of the things that's also really, really great about her is she's 19 years old. She's maintain levels of bravery and composure on that court. She was not intimidated by who she was playing. She was not intimidated by the crowds, the stage, anything like that. She stepped up and she went after her opponents, and that was one of the most exciting things to watch about her. And the fact that she was so composed. Like, a lot of people have been comparing her to Leylah Fernandez, and you could see why, because she's a lefty and she's a bit scrappy and she likes to jump around and shake her fist behind the baseline. I think I'm not going to go too super technical with it. I think there are clear differences in the way that she plays, not least because she's quite a bit taller than Fernandez. But also, I think Leylah is seems a lot more animated in comparison to Eala. But yeah, I think one of the nice things from that tournament is, first of all, Eala was absolutely basking in all the love that she got, even after losing that match to Pegula. And I've never seen
such a great
someone so happy after
Yeah.
losing a really, really tough tennis match and realizing that, it doesn't matter because everyone loves me. And that's going to be a real weapon for her going in. If she can maintain that bravery, she is going to be a factor on the tournament, which means we are going to be talking tennis with a lot more Filipino friends, which I'm very excited about. We already do that anyway. I interact a lot with Island Tennis Girl on X, who's from the Philippines and regularly destroys her sleep schedule to watch tennis. But now maybe we'll see some more and say there seems to be a lot of sort of excitement in that part of the world that they now have a tennis player.
Yeah, and that's mostly what I love about this story. You said everything about Alex that I would have said, just plus one for all of that, because that's what she brought to the tennis. But she has brought in a whole new fan base, which is so lovely. And you realize how people become tennis fans. I think it's similar for us. I mean, yes, it happened years ago, but I was watching a tennis player on TV and I thought, oh my goodness, I connect with that person. I feel, similar to that person, and you become a fan of the person, then that leads you to the sport. And I think that's what's going on right now with Alex and a lot of Filipinos who are discovering the sport of tennis and then want to pick up a racket and play. Like, she is, before this week, a Filipino player had never beat a Grand Slam champion, let alone 3. So she is the first in so many ways for Filipino tennis, and it's really great to see what's going on. Like, she pretty much has made our TikTok.
Thank you, Alex Eala.
Thank you so much. But we really didn't have. I don't have a personal TikTok. I never did. So when I was
what is TikTok?
There we go. Let's start there. But I thought, with Ground Pass, maybe we should have one. But I really didn't have a plan of what to do with it. So all I've been doing is whatever reels I post on Instagram, I just post them on TikTok as well. And when she beat Madison Keys it was 2 things. I got some new editing software that I wanted to practice with, and I was like, let me just make a TikTok about how much I love what Alex Eala is doing at the Miami Open. She just beat Madison Keys and uses editing software to do it. And I posted it and then woke up to like hundreds more subscribers. I was like, and like thousands, thousands of likes. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is going on? And it's just kept going and going. And the comments that they leave, 90% of the comments are, I'm new to tennis. I just started following tennis because of Alex. I don't know anything about tennis. I'm here for Alex. That is 90% of the comments I'm getting on
Yeah.
those videos. But I love it because, I recently, I think I did that today, this morning, where I kind of responded to one of the comments and I was like, well, welcome to Ground Pass. We are here to help you understand the game of tennis. Join us. But
Yeah.
it's so awesome to see because I think it's the only way tennis survives as a modern sport is if it can
Mm.
grow the fan base and especially grow the fan base outside of the typical American or European home base because we get it. Tennis will always be popular in France, Italy, and Spain. It will always be popular in the States, but can we grow it outside of these countries? And then it becomes a bigger sport.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and egg with tennis growth because there's definitely a few fans out there who think it's not worth going until there's fans. But hey, maybe that means we get a Filipino 250 to start with or a
Ooh.
500. That could be fun. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm so glad that there's so many people asking us about tennis. I think something that we have been discussing behind the scenes, we don't know what we're going to do yet, is, how do we rehash some of our very, very early episodes, which went into how tennis works and what it all means and everything else like that. And I still think they're good episodes. I still think it's worth going back, but it's now almost 2 years worth of content to go back through. So we need to find a way of bringing that up or doing some bite-sized versions of that to link you back. So stay tuned. We'll work something out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you are Filipino and listen to this, welcome. Send us your questions. And if there's like a lot of the same sort of question, we'll do something on it. A bit like Anastasia did something recently about blacked out rackets, which was like even fans didn't know about. So we're more than happy to go back to basics with it. But I've talked a lot about a play that I find exciting. This is your chance, Anastasia, to do your regular Artifice.
Yes. Every 2 weeks, we have a section of the podcast. It's called the Arthur Feast Corner. Welcome to the Arthur Feast Corner, where we talk about how awesome Arthur Feast is.
This week was the week that I put both feet on the Arthur Feast train. Which match was it? It wasn't the Zverev match. It was the match before that, I think.
It had to be. I'm looking it up now. Was it the Tiafoe one?
Yes, Tiafoe. The Tiafoe match. That was a fun match. Especially since I also really enjoy watching Francis Tiafoe when he's on, and I think he's a box office player. But yeah, the way Arthur Feast woke up and then just basically crushed Tiafoe towards the end of that final set was super impressive. And I think I'm now fully with you, Anastasia, on the Arthur Feast is fantastic train. I still don't know if he'll ever win a Grand Slam, but I'm definitely going to want to watch his matches.
Yeah, and that's the thing to just start with there. Watch his matches. There isn't, and I'll come to this when we go to player of the fortnight, but he is just box office guaranteed fun 90% of the time. There are matches that I've watched of his where he's either injured or just not feeling it that day and he loses, and it's not a good loss either. But this tournament and Indian Wells, I think something happened in Indian Wells that really turned him around a little bit. He has been really gritty. He's been really digging deep to say, no, I'm going to fight to either win the match and stay, or at least make sure that player beats me at my best, and he makes it fun. He knows how to work the crowd, control the crowd. He makes it a show. So if you're trying to if I was trying to sell tennis on the street and just said, you know what, you've never watched a tennis match in your life, I would tell them to go watch an Arthur Feast match with Tiafoe. That they watch that, they're fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not. Don't get me wrong. Is it the best example of tennis you'll ever see in terms of high standard? No, but it
No.
was still pretty high. It's like an A rather than A plus. But the drama of it and the showmanship and everything happened in that match that you could possibly think of. I want to hear your perspective on this, and we're getting into a little bit of a fan black hole with this question, but I want to do this anyway. I want to ask you, Anastasia, do you think that Artifice reminds, because he reminds me of this, does he remind you of a player that retired relatively recently? Joe-Wilfried Tsonga.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. He does remind me of Tsonga a lot. And it's funny because a lot of people do the Monfils thing. And I think it's just because of the last name. And it's the
Yeah.
easy comparison. But he actually reminds me more of Tsonga than Gael Monfils. They have similar vibes. Tsonga was fun.
Yeah, I would say if anyone wants to kind of really get into watching fun tennis, go Google Joe-Wilfried Tsonga highlight reels, go Google Artifice highlight reels, and go Google the highlight reels of the player we'll get to play of the Fortnite on in a minute, because I've seen what Anastasia's put. But yeah, little teaser for you. May have picked up a hint from the earlier conversation there. But yeah, go watch Artifice. I have one more player to talk about before we kind of move on and do the overall, like, who actually won the tournament, guys. And my response is, that's not the only story that matters. But is Emma Raducanu worth watching?
She's back. I don't. Okay.
We've been with the show, Anastasia, and for
No.
those of you, like, again, we're 2 years in. We're not assuming like you would know the ins and outs. Maybe you would have remembered Emma Raducanu. She won the US Open 3 years ago. And she does this occasionally where she'll do something where it looks like maybe it's like she's going to be US Open level again. And this is one of those times. Anastasia, why are you more optimistic about this one?
I just feel like she seems more, and maybe this is growth, because I always try to remember how young these players are, and I want to look back when I was 21 and when I was 22, I wasn't a fully formed adult or human being. And I don't know, there was something about her that I've seen in her matches, in her post-match interviews, that I just feel like she's starting to come into her own, into herself. And you see her be happier and make like decisions that you might say, well, Emma Raducanu came into this tournament in not the best way, in the sense, like, so backstory for anyone not, chronically online like Nick and I, Emma Raducanu came into this tournament with a new coach that she'd been with for 2 weeks, and literally the relationship ended before her first match. So it was almost, what's happening, what's going on. She got help from Mark Pecci, who, if you watch the Tennis Channel a lot, he's a commentator. He's big in the tennis scene. He's coached before.
He coached Andy Murray years ago when he was young.
Exactly.
And he was also a professional player back in the 90s.
Yeah. So he's definitely been in the tennis world, but there was just something about that team dynamic and watching them, and that I was like, oh my goodness, like, this just feels a bit different than what I've seen before from Emma Raducanu's camp and also herself. That's giving me a little bit more, confidence in saying that a change has happened, and I don't even know if we ever kind of talked about this on the podcast, but she's had a difficult year in general, in terms of just like, there were some stalking issues that happened in Dubai, the tournament in Dubai. And
it wasn't Dubai, but it was ongoing from several tournaments for that.
Right. So I feel like having that pressure and that insecurity a little bit. She didn't even know she was going to play Indian Wells, but there was something about a lightness to her that I felt in Miami that makes me at least hopeful that this is a new leaf.
I would say, yeah, I've certainly seen Emma Raducanu being much more proactive this tournament in the way that she plays. She's definitely a lot happier. And she talked a lot about like realizing that she needs less structure to the way she does things and just want to be able to have fun with it. I think what also gives me some optimism is the way she lost. Bear with me on this one. So I've talked before about when Emma Raducanu was shown hope of maybe putting something together. And then the match that she goes out to, she just can't compete with the player who eventually takes her out, usually a top 10 player, something like that. By the way, she got her first top 10 win on a hard court ever. She didn't have to beat a top 10 player at the US Open, although when she won it, although I will kind of dispute that and say that a couple of the people she beat, or at least one of the people she beat, ended up being live ranked in the top 10 and was going to be the following Monday. So it's a technicality thing, but I'm going to do my tennis nerd thing and clarify that. But official top 10 win by beating Emma Navarro in Miami on hard court. But before that, like when she's played, like I'm thinking Cincinnati 2022, she beat Serena Williams and then Victoria Azarenka, and then went out to Jessica Pegula in 2 sets, but it just felt like she was a little way off. It's happened when she's had a good tournament, then she loses to Iga or Aryna, and she's a little off. Like you can tell that she's having to try and keep up with them. She loses to Jessica Pegula in a 3-set match where I feel like 4-2 sets. The first set, Pegula got 1 break and didn't threaten to break any other of Emma's service games. Emma kind of kept up with her and then turned it on the second set. And she always looked like she was going to win that second set, other than maybe a few bumps in the road. But that's kind of what I would say is the key difference there is Emma was competing with Jess, who made it to the final, then also going on to beat Alex Eala in that epic semi. And that's where I'm going to take my hope from for Emma Raducanu. We'll see what happens, but we know how good she can be, and I want to see it again because when she's playing well, it's really good to watch. So to answer my own question, yes, definitely go watch Emma Raducanu, and not because she's a celebrity.
No, because she's a great tennis player. Okay, let's get to who won the Miami Open.
Yeah, who actually won, Anastasia? We're on the women's at the minute, and also that's the only singles result that we have. So shall we start with that?
Yes. So, Aryna Sabalenka.
Remember her?
I always want to say her name like that. Like every time I see her name, I'm just like, Aryna Sabalenka.
And this is why you should hire Anastasia to do the walk-on announcements at the US Open.
There you go.
If the other guy, I forget his name, can't do it, if he's sick, get Anastasia.
I can put some je ne sais quoi to the names, okay? But Aryna, #1 player in the world, and she won it. You know, it's funny because in this tournament, I did not pay attention to her side of the draw. I don't think that's where any of the stories came from.
Nobody was talking about Aryna, even though she was she was crushing people and going, oh yeah, Aryna just crushed someone. So what's going on with Alex? What's going on with Emma? What's going on with Iga? And, what's going on with Coco? And Aryna's doing her thing right now, and it's kind of awesome to watch.
Yes. And that's the thing. When she's doing her thing, you're just sort of like, who's beating her? Who's beating her at her thing? Because she's so strong and confident and when she's playing well. And Miami's a bit of a home tournament for her. She lives in Miami part of the year. And I think she was just, again, happy, had her team, who she says are her family. I really love that. So she had her family with her. And it just, like you said, every time she would win, they'd be like, oh, yeah, Aryna just did her thing. Moving on, next, and that's what it felt like right up until the final. And she, like we said, Jessica Pegula was her opponent in the final. This is their third final now or fourth?
Third final in 12 months.
Yes, they meet a lot.
US hard courts.
On US hard court, they meet a lot at these tournaments. So they did last year, it was Cincinnati, US Open, and now here they are at the Miami Open.
If we were to do a US hardcourt slam just based on Cincinnati, New York, Indian Wells, and Miami, Aryna won 3 out of 4, was in the final of all 4, and the only person who spoiled the party was Mira Andreeva, who was the one opponent that wasn't Jessica Pegula that she played in the other 3.
Yep. She could have done like whatever name we can come with that collection of tournaments. But yeah, she's just looking really good. I posted that, she now has over 10,000 ranking points to put her at number one, not only in the world rankings, but also in the race for the end of year finals. And she's just, it's gonna take a lot to knock her off that pedestal, which is crazy because I think last year it was more sort of that fight for the number one position between Aryna and Iga. It was like little points here and there could like go either way for either of them. And I think Aryna this year is kind of running away with it.
I have 2 points off the back of that. Number one, just to go into like when we say 10,000 ranking points, like that's just a number. And if you're a newer tennis fan, that might not mean much to you. Getting to 10,000 ranking points is actually really, really hard. Like since they revamped the point system, only about 8 people have got that many points. And it's really hard to do because you have to be on it throughout year in, year out. Like Iga's done it. Serena did it. Like Serena's got the record for the highest points total since 2009. If he tries to rank Ash Barty, but Maria Sharapova, those kind of names. So that's the kind of category of person that Aryna Sabalenka has put herself into, just to kind of give you a kind of context of this is why it's a big deal, because it's very, very, very hard to do. The other point I was going to say was like you're talking about, when we did the narrative last year. I remember when we did this podcast not quite a year ago after the French Open, and it was like Iga Swiatek is so far ahead because she was on the 10,000 point count after the French Open, and it was like, well, no one's beating her. And I actually said to you, even as the Iga Swiatek fan, well, hold your horses because the year's not done yet. And lo and behold, Aryna Sabalenka catches up and stuff happens and she gets ahead. And the orders kind of flipped around. And now Arena's the one with a lot to be far ahead. Like tennis can change. The one thing I would say is it is now pretty much impossible for Aryna not to be the number one when we get to the US Open. And that year world number one ranking will probably not come under threat until the US Open. And that completely depends on how the clay season goes and whether Aryna can finally win Wimbledon. Because if Aryna wins Wimbledon, that's just locked in now. It pretty much. So, yeah, state of tennis can change. But as it is, especially with the clay season coming up and Iga having more points, usually getting more points there and can't gain on Aryna because she maxed out last year and can't gain anything from it, even if she does the same thing again. So Aryna is here to stay as world number one, and she is going to be the face of the top of women's tennis for quite some time. So go and enjoy the ride, I guess. And as I said, when she unleashes the inner tiger, it's pretty epic to watch.
Yeah, no, it's really great. I was going to say, everyone go get a temporary tiger tattoo because that's just what it is now. So yeah, we don't have a women's doubles because
No.
Let me check. I think the tennis has not started back up again.
It has not. Mira Andreeva and Diana Schneider are 3 games to love up against Kato and Buxa and have been since about 3 hours ago.
Yeah. So still no tennis in Miami.
We did get another result though.
Yes, we did. Yes. Now, we talk about the sunshine double, okay? We talk about how hard it is to do, going from the desert and dry heat to humidity and, really, really hot temperatures. But guess what? Marcelo Arevalo and Mate Pavic did the sunshine double in the men's doubles category. So applause to them. And I'm really, you know what it is too? I'm a little upset. Because if this was a singles player, we would have graphics, people shouting from the rooftops, there would be fireworks in the sky. The sunshine double has been done. And because it's a doubles team, it was like a blip. And I don't know. It's hard because doubles is having a hard time, I think, gaining traction with fans and, finding a following. But I want to say that at least we are going to be here, and our friends over at Tennis Tribe as well, who will always tell you to watch more doubles and get to know these players. Because another team, there were other teams this year that I was really, well, actually 3 teams if we want to go there. Ellen Perez and Yelena Ostapenko playing together. They're always super fun. I mean, they're now the fun team. They're the fun team that I love to watch. But Chris Harrison and Evan King, who I think I mention every single episode now, they got to the semifinals, quarterfinals.
They're
Quarterfinals.
pretty well.
Yeah, they did really well. No, I think they got, yeah, it was semifinals. Anyway, and then Henry Patton and Harry Rivera as well got to the semifinals and didn't quite make it. So there's so many good stories in doubles, and I just think we always talk about how hard the sunshine double is, and the only these few players have done the sunshine double, and then it finally happens this year, and it's just like cricket.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has definitely got lost in everything because that's doing a sunshine double, whether it's singles or doubles, is really, really impressive. Especially since actually it's probably a lot rarer in doubles because people swap partners a lot. So
yeah,
really, really good props to them, and that this makes them kind of we talk about dominant number ones. They are now locked in as number one, right? That team in the men's side. Watch out for them because they're going to be good on every surface. But nice diversion. So we're into an interesting period now in the tennis calendar because for 1 week, the US spring swing and the clay court season overlap because, yes, we are now officially everywhere is on clay. It's not like the golden swing where it was like some were on clay and some were on hard. Like everyone's playing on clay now, but we're starting playing on clay in the US and a little bit in Europe and South America. We don't need to talk about that right now. But yeah, the US spring swing finale, but also clay is here, and the
clay is here.
Spanish and French player loving American on my screen is absolutely loving this.
Clay is here. I love natural surfaces. So,
what's a natural surface?
Okay. So
I'm going to do this to you, Anastasia.
No, I love it because not everyone knows what I'm talking about. But tennis is played on mostly three different surfaces: hard court, clay, and grass. And the natural surfaces are clay and grass because they are derived from nature. Clay is made out of clay.
I think also the natural surfaces thing comes from clay and grass being around for a lot longer than hard courts. Like hard courts, as we know it, are a relatively modern phenomenon in the game of tennis. If you were playing tennis 100 years ago, like even the top stars from 100 years ago, the only options were clay or grass.
Or grass. Yeah, exactly. And also to note about clay specifically, it's mostly brick colored, except for in the US during the green clay season, which is basically in Charleston.
It used to be longer, but now it's just Charleston.
Now it's just Charleston. It is Charleston, which is a WTA 500 event, is played on green clay, which is a very, very unique surface. Every time I watch it on TV, I'm like, what? Is it gray, green? It's green. It's green clay. And so, yeah, those are the natural surfaces. Fun fact, one more surface at tennis used to also be played on carpet. And yes, I do mean carpet, like in your house carpet. But they do not play it on carpet anymore. Isn't there a challenger?
Yeah, it still uses it, but it's not something you see on the main tour anymore. Yeah. But like even up until the 90s, it was still a thing. And like if you go back, like as someone who trawls through tennis history, up to the 1960s, some indoor courts were wood. So wood was a surface.
Ooh, how fast were those? No. Oh my word. You're just slipping and sliding.
I would imagine they were pretty fast, but then they weren't necessarily playing at the kind of speeds they do now.
True. But yes, so clay season is here. What tournaments can we expect for the clay season?
So there are 5 main tour tournaments happening. Should we do the US Spring Swing ones first, and then we'll just do some honorable mentions for the others. So Anastasia's already mentioned the Charleston 500, which is a WTA event. And if there's any reason for an American fan to go, it would be this. 8 out of the top 10 ranked American players are going to be there. The only 2 who are not are Coco Gauff and McCartney Kessler. And as cool as Coco Gauff is, American tennis does not completely revolve around her. You still have Madison Keys, your like Grand Slam champion from the Australian Open, Sophia Kennedy, who won the Australian Open a few years ago. Sloane Stephens isn't going this year, but you've also got Jessica Pegula, who's going to be the top seed, just striking back at Miami, US Open finalist. Amanda Samova's playing. I could go on, but basically, pretty much every main ranked US player is going. Like 13 out of the top 16 women's US players are playing in Charleston, along with Yelena Ostapenko and Zheng Qinwen and a couple of other kind of names. Daria Kasatkina is playing as well, who made the headlines this week because she's now switched nationalities. She's now Australian.
Aussie,
But,
Aussie,
Wait. So in addition to that, Charleston on TV looks like a fantastic venue. It was a WTA 1000 event like 20, 30 years ago. It did go through a phase of being quite a big event, but and the facilities reflect the size of it. It's one of the biggest 500 draws. It's a like 64 player draw, 40, maybe it's like 56, 48, something like that. Like it's a relatively big event for a 500, and it's a great way of kind of simultaneously ending your clay swing and ending your US spring swing whilst also kicking off your clay swing, especially given the way green clay works. It does seem to go like a 500, go like a hard court. So yeah, that's my ramble over. Yeah, Charleston 500, big name going. Definitely watch on TV. If you could go. But if you can't get to Charleston, you might want to consider Houston. Which do you want to talk about?
Yes, Houston is an ATP 250 event that's held on the traditional brick-colored clay. By the way, these tournaments that we're mentioning now have already started. They're in the qualifying rounds. So earlier, before we started recording, we were looking at some scores for the qualifiers. But no, Houston is held in a historic kind of country club location, and it actually is a very popular event. Our very first guest of Meet the Professionals, Blair Henley, is there. I got to talk to her in Miami, and it's one of her favorites. She's looking forward to it. She's there already, actually, because she's kind of the voice of that tournament, and she does all the on-court interviews as well. But yeah, it has Ben Shelton, actually, the defending champion, will not be in Houston this year. Unfortunately, I haven't seen anything that he's injured, or maybe he's just taking some time off. I'm not quite sure, but he is not going to be there. But we will have Francis Tiafoe, Chris Eubanks, Riley Opelka. I think Riley Opelka got a wild card.
Yeah.
He did, yes.
Tommy Paul is also playing. He's the top seed. There is also, I don't know if you've seen the draw, Anastasia, so I'm hoping this is a live reaction, but there is a first round match I 100% know you want to watch.
I have not seen the draw. You may break it to me now.
Alex Mickelson against Leonard Tien.
No!
First round. Get to Houston, go watch
it. Go watch it. But fun fact, if you don't know why I would have that reaction, but Alex Mickelson and Leonard Tien are not only friends, they share a coach and an agent. So I just don't know.
Wow.
They could share a player box. How about that? They just share the player box. Whoever's winning gets the most coaching. I don't know.
Surely whoever loses needs the more coaching. But anyway, a bit of a spiky joke there. Something to look forward to with Houston. I'm gonna do bullet points because we are doing this is a bit of a longer podcast now. Bullet points. There are 3 other 250s happening. 2 ATP, 1 WTA. They're all on clay. So we've got ATP's Bucharest, Marrakesh. So actually Africa, Europe, and South America is hosting the WTA because Bogota is the 250 there. I think the main thing to watch out there is, Iva Jovic, teenage American sensation, is playing in Bogota. So I'll be keeping an eye on how she does. And it's an interesting choice for her as a warm-up. And then if you're carrying about sort of the week after at this point, then we're building up to Monte Carlo being in the ATP 1000, which is a pretty spectacular one. We'll probably do a mini pod going into that at some point if we've got time in between what's coming out next episode, which we can talk about later. Billie Jean King Cup the week after as well. But focus on this week. Clay season proper starts, and pretty much every single time zone has tennis. So,
Yes.
should we wrap
Yes.
up this fortnight before we get too engrossed in next fortnight?
Yes. Yes. Let us announce the players of the fortnight. I'm working on my announcer voice. That's all I'm doing. I'm working on my announcer voice.
Yeah. Can you tell us past 10 at 9? I'm getting a bit goofy.
It is getting really late for you. I will start with my player of the fortnight, which, if you haven't picked up from the whole episode, I will let you know now. It is Gael Monfils. And you might be thinking, but Anastasia, you always pick a young upstart, someone coming up on the scene, so I can go see them on a ground pass. And we're going to switch it up this week. Gael Monfils is definitely someone you can go see on the grounds. And watching him go through the Miami Open, play the most phenomenal tennis that I've seen from him in so long. Gael Monfils has been around forever. He was the oldest singles player in the draw. He was older than Novak Djokovic, okay, guys? So he is definitely getting up there. And the reason why I pick him is we might not have him for very much longer. And I got very nostalgic during this tournament watching him play such great tennis, especially against young players that he should, in theory, not be beating, but he still plays such great tennis, really is a lot of fun. He's doing his jumping forehands and just like his celebration, which is kind of like from that Marvel movie. Yeah, Black Panther. And I don't know how long we're going to have him as a professional player. I think it is imperative. It is so important that if you are at a tournament and he's in the draw, you must go watch him live, because who knows when he's going to call it, So he is my player of the fortnight for that reason. He's a great watch, and catch him while he's still hot.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully he's going to be hot for a lot longer, for a little bit longer. So you can go watch him because, he will be on a ground pass. I have seen him play. I saw him at Wimbledon last year and he was great there. And I recommend him as a player. And he is he's always been box office, and it's great to see him still producing that level that he's always done, even at 38 as he is now. I'm going to do mine. Now, when I first saw yours, Anastasia, I think you justified Gael pretty well, because I was like, why did you go for Gael Monfils? I thought you were going to go with Jakub Mensik, or, the young player who's made waves. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm going with Alex Eala because I think if I go into why, I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier in the podcast. So in theory, Anastasia, if you just wanted to just cut what I said earlier and put it at the end here and just do that, probably way too much editing. Let's not do that. But I think I have to go with Alex because she's now broken top 100. This is a huge breakthrough moment for her. You will be able to still see her on a ground pass. I find it unlikely that she's going to be somehow seeded super high by the time she comes to a tournament near you. But more than that, I think Alex's story, I think if you're going to go with someone who's going to unlock new tennis fans, you've got to go with Alex for this one. And not just because she's from the Philippines. I work with someone who's from the Philippines, actually. She's on my team at work. And one of the first things I did was, after she started winning, I was like, you have to check out Alex Eala. I know you don't watch tennis, but you have to keep an eye on what's going on with her, and you should be interested. And she ended up going and watching a bunch of tennis highlights, and she's going to try playing it over the weekend. So she's going, oh, could I go see her at Wimbledon? I said, yeah, probably. And Alex Eala is probably someone that anyone on a ground pass would be able to go watch at Wimbledon, at any of the tournaments coming up. US Open's still a while away, but crazier things could happen. But it would take a crazy run for Eala probably to win a Grand Slam and not to be on a ground pass. But I definitely think that you have to check her out while you can, wherever she plays. But thank you, Alex, for just showing us why we love tennis and showing why other people love tennis. And that's why she's my player of the fortnight.
Yeah, I feel like she almost wrote her name into our document immediately. He was like, I will be the player of the Fortnite. Thank you.
I'm pretty sure I texted you saying Alex Eala is my player of the fortnight like a week ago, like halfway
Yep.
through the tournament. Like it was between her and Ashlyn Kruger, and then Ayala just blew what Kruger did in the tournament out the water. No offense to
Yeah.
Ashlyn, because she was really cool as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, that has to be Alex.
And we'll save, Ashlyn maybe for another time because as we said with the rules, we can't repeat a player of the fortnight. We now have a really cool document that I actually love that we're keeping track of all the players of the fortnight for this season. So maybe we'll do something cool at the end of the season and like
I was
publish it
thinking
somewhere.
this, like, that's going to have to be where we'll look at our players of the year from. Yeah, Ashlyn's going to get herself on that list at some point. I'm pretty
Yeah.
confident in that.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that's it for episode 14 of Round Pass. Thank you guys so much for following us through the spring swing. It's not over yet, as we said. There are 2 more tournaments left for the US spring swing. What is coming up next week? So I think what's a little teaser, but it is the beginning of a month. So, like we have said, we now have this new series called Meet the Professionals, and we are so excited. Nick, should we say who now? Let's say who. Yeah, let's say who. So, Nick, who are we going to be interviewing, or who did we interview already? So the episode's just going to come out next week for Meet the Professionals.
It is the youngest tennis commentator on the circuit, of ATP Challenger fame, of Tennis Channel fame, of BBC Radio, Wimbledon Radio fame. Abigail Johnson is going to be our Meet the Professionals. And I will say this, I would say I've done a lot of great interviews. I think this is possibly my favourite, although Blair is very, very close as well. I am very excited for everyone to hear about Abigail's story and a bit of an insight into the world of tennis commentary.
Yes, I'm very excited for this episode. It's the one that almost got me to cry. So you can just listen away and see if you can handle it without crying. But it was a really great episode. So that's what's going to come next week. If anything sensational happens in like the week up to that, I think what we will do is maybe record just a really short intro to that episode that we can just add on if there are any sort of results or anything that come up. Otherwise, that's what you're going to get next week. And then we will see you at the end of Monte Carlo. And we'll do a recap of the tournaments that happened, on the clay up until then.
And like you can still follow us on social medias. Like we're still going to do coffee catch-ups, right? We're still going to do, and that's where you'll probably get your results fix and your updates. So follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, because they'll probably get that in shorts, and now TikTok.
Now TikTok. We're now on TikTok.
Yeah. Right. So Anastasia, when we stop recording, you need to explain to me what this TikTok thing is, okay? Because I need someone to tell me what this even is.
I can break it down. Don't worry about it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Right after we stop recording.
Sure.
Okay. So guys, that was this episode of Round Pass. Thank you again. Leave us a like, a subscribe, a comment, 5 stars, all of the fun things. And we will see you again, hopefully somewhere on the grounds, in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
I almost just closed the meeting.